Students, please welcome our speaker with a huge round of applause. Officer who had joined the Indian Administrative Service in 1988 and allocated the Assam Meghalaya cadre. Deputy Commissioner of Districts, Principal Secretary to the Government of Assam, Director Central Secretary. Eventually, Shri Jishnu Barua was elevated to the post of Chief Secretary to the Government of Assam and superannuated from service as Chief Secretary on 31st August 2022. He had concurrently held charge as Chairman, Assam Power Distribution Company Limited, AP College, Delhi University. An avid reader, Shri Barua has a vast collection of books, both fiction and non-fiction. It gives us great pleasure to have you amongst us, sir. Once again, we welcome you amongst us. I now request the Honorable Chancellor, sir, to kindly felicitate our invited guest.
Of Royal Global University, Dr. A.K. Pansari, members of the teaching staff of this university, and dear friends. I'm here to give you a presentation on the essence of leadership, and this happens to be my personal view because there are varied opinions and interpretations of what leadership should constitute. So what I am trying to do now and would be doing is basically to define leadership and through personal examples of my successes and failures, I would like to drive home the point that eventually leadership is basically what you want to be. There's hardly anyone who you can say is an inborn leader, has that inborn talent of leadership, or the gift of leadership. So this is, so when we, in fact, this topic I have got deeply interested because I was asked to speak on this topic in the University of Dibrugarh in the Management Studies department a couple of months ago. Then I had prepared for it, and subsequently in 2 or 3 places I had given this lecture, and it seemed to have gone off well. And so therefore, in every lecture or session, I derive a lot of new lessons. There are a lot of key learnings for me, as much as is for you, because you can think aloud and keep on shaping, reshaping, changing, finalizing your views on leadership. Coming to the concept such as leadership, I must say, first of all, this one, sorry, just tell me one second. This one, where to press? Okay. This is the presentation format. Definition and concept leadership, the core values. I would just, then leadership from history and personal experience, the concept of team building and how it is to be done, the varied leadership styles, and ethical dilemmas faced by leadership. What are the qualities of leadership that you see or you observe? You see any leader, you find there are certain things which are very attractive. Why is it that some people have them and not every one of us? What is so special? What is the essence of that person's style of leadership? when you think over it, you start forming an opinion of what leadership should constitute. In our opinion, there is nothing right or wrong type of leadership. It's really up to the individual concerned or you as to what kind of leader you would like to become. Basically, this is, I don't know why it's not happening. Yeah. There's a very simple definition which is there in Oxford Dictionary. It says leadership is the action of leading a group of people or an organization or the ability to do it. But I'm afraid this definition is a bit circular. It doesn't tell you what is leading a group means, what leading means. It's circular. It doesn't define anything to my mind. But to my mind, a more comprehensive definition of leadership is that it creates an environment in which others are able to self-actualize in the process of completing the assignment. That is, you create an environment, if you're a leader, where others really self-actualize and attain their potentiality. It's not simply that you are there, one man, and everybody is a follower, and also unthinking followers, and you provide the leadership. But that's not the right type of leadership in my mind, and to my mind, and simply when you create an environment when everyone is able to develop his leadership and leadership skills. You cannot be a giant banyan tree which nothing grows underneath. Right. Something so abstract and theoretical that people think that this is not generally applicable in the real world. And it's not applicable to us in the real world in any case. But it is something that has manifold implications in our lives as citizens, as family members, or in a group of friends. You would find in any setting, be it in a political setting, in a setting of, in an office setting, in an administrative setting, even in a university like this, there are certain things that happen, certain leadership that emerges in such, even among group of relatives, you would find that somebody takes on the leadership role and he shows initiative, or she shows initiative and is able to convince everyone. And that's an example of leadership in those settings. So it's everywhere. So it is something which is everywhere, and it can be seen and observed by all of us. And it's so very important to all of us so that we can also provide leadership or at least assist the leadership in different situations in life. The best example I can give of military leadership. You see, there are various forms of leadership which I will talk about subsequently. You have authoritarian leadership, which is exemplified by military leadership, because there is no democracy there. It is the leader who decides everything, and power flows from the top to bottom. The leader commands, provides leadership, others simply follow. And in a military setting, that's the only kind of leadership that is successful. So that's a different thing. In democratic setting, there is another thing, and especially in a democracy where there are a lot of independent-minded, intelligent people, and where you have established civil laws, there you would find that democratic form of leadership is very, very useful and very effective. Now, when you look at history, remember Alexander the Great in the autumn of 326 BC was at the fag end of his India campaign, or the world conquest, the campaign for the world conquest. He had crossed the Jhelum River and had reached the the ends of the world. I mean, that's what he wanted to go to. I mean, he reached the Bias River, and there, in a way, he was morally defeated by his own troops, and he had to withdraw because the soldiers refused to carry on. They wanted to go back to their families in Macedonia. So when he was returning, he went down the river Ravi en route to the Indus River, and then to to a place called Potal, which is today's modern Karachi. And from there on, he went on through the Gedrosian desert, the deserts of Delhi, Balochistan, very dry and dreary desert of Balochistan, and reached Persia with enormous consequences. More of it later. I don't know whether I'll get a chance to talk on that. But nevertheless, the point is that he, en route to Indus River, he was going down the Ravi, and there was one last battle to be waged, and that was in today's Multan city. And Multan in those days was controlled by a tribe called the Malis. The Malians were also fierce fighters. And Alexander besieged the city of Multan, and somehow the Multanis or the Malians did not yield or submit to Alexander. The walls were very strong, the court was extremely strongly built, rock-like, and Alexander could not break into it. Since he couldn't breach into the fort, Alexander asked his men to get a ladder and placed it along the wall, and he clambered up the rope. Initially, when he asked his men to go up the ladder, there were very few takers. And remember, these men have fought continuously for 8 to 9 years, and they were battle weary, and somehow the enthusiasm was missing. So it was left to Alexander, the leader, to clamber up the ladder, and he was followed by just 3 persons, 3 NCOs, non-commissioned officers. And he eventually reached the rampart, but as he was going up, his men started following up. And due to the sheer weight of numbers, the ladder collapsed. And Alexander was left stranded on the rampart of the Multan fort. Now, a man of ordinary intelligence and prudence would jump back to his friend's side in case something of that sort happens. But Alexander was no man of ordinary prudence. He was a man who had a mission and who was in search of glory. Instead of jumping onto his own men, he jumped on the port side. He jumped onto the city of Multan. And very soon, he was cornered by the Malians. He fought desperately along with 3 other persons. When he was cornered, they threw stones. There were arrows being fired, and the whole atmosphere was full of these arrows coming in his directions. But he somehow survived because he had the Trojan shield, and his men were able to stop the arrows from piercing initially. Eventually, one arrow passed by the shield, evaded his shield, and pierced his chest, and eventually also pierced the lungs. He bled profusely, and very soon Alexander collapsed in a pool of blood right there. In the meantime, the word went out to the Greeks outside, who heard that Alexander was in serious trouble and he may have actually died. These Greeks outside became desperate. They kept hammering at the gate, hammering, and soon the bar yielded, and the Greeks could break open the gate. And they rushed in, slaughtered the Multanis or the Malians to the last man. And eventually Alexander, who was just about survived, struggling with death and living, he was on that state. He had to be administered medicine, Unani medicine, the Ayurvedic medicine brought in by the Greeks. And he was taken away. The men thought, and the rumor went around that Alexander had actually died. And that was a disaster for the Greeks. because they thought that who is going to provide leadership to them to get back to Macedonia? And Alexander got to know, he was actually still alive, but was in a precarious condition. They brought Alexander on a boat where the army had assembled. Alexander, for men on the outside and on the bank, Alexander seemed quite dead till the time he raised his arm. There was a huge shout of joy, and men literally pointed their hands towards the very heaven, shouting in great joy. And Alexander was brought on a litter to the bank, but as he reached the bank, he asked for a horse, and he climbed onto a horse and started going amidst the Greeks, so the army. The men were beside themselves in joy, and they were all clapping in unison, shouting, and some tried to touch him, some wept uncontrollably. This is Alexander, he's still alive. And that actually points to the fact that he had really he was really able to elicit the complete devotion of his men. So Alexander is an example of that sort of leadership. In his own battle, and now it will take me to another story of Alexander, about whom I have read very deeply and from diverse sources, including 7-8 books, and that is another story. But to say simply this, that he was a man who led from the front. And when you say led from the front, is that he used to go only with his cavalry unit, and they were known as companions. Now, companion cavalry was basically just 300, 400 men, all from the Greek and Macedonian nobility. And they would basically go, and they were the tanks of the modern world, ancient world. So he had these men in large numbers, his foot soldiers, the phalanx with long spears, who were very well drilled and who would move in one direction and in a very disciplined manner. It's like a wall of death coming at you, at the enemy. And at the same time, Alexander would go from the side, leading his troops on horseback and attacking the person of the opposing general or king. That was his kind of leadership. But again, this is only one sort of leadership, but Alexander exemplified military leadership in the ancient world. Even today we talk about his leadership qualities as a leader, military leader. It happened in all the battle of Issus, battle of Granicus, battle for the city of Tyre, battle of Gaugamela, and in India it was in Jhelum, on the banks of Jhelum. So many battles he fought. And even in Central Asia, remember, he was the only general who won in Central Asia and Afghanistan. Having crossed the Oxus River and into what is today Samarkand. So all that thing happened, but that's extreme leadership. Now, let me tell you from my own personal experience as Deputy Commissioner. This is not one of great success, but people understood and what I meant by at that point in time. Now, I was in 94-95 Deputy Commissioner in then known as Non-Kachar district, Hill district. Today it's Dimma Hasao. And unlike Alexander, I thought I did not keep my channels of communication open. The government had deployed a battalion of Punjab police, armed police in Haflong. And these men were fresh from Taran Taran and Amritsar in Punjab, having dealt with extremism and insurgency-like situation in Punjab. Now, what had happened is that the men, of course, evoked fear. People were very scared of them, and they just became a little careless. As a result, about 9 or 10 people had died in an ambush while they were going to fetch water. And after that, they went down very heavily on the local population. तुम लोग सब मिले हुए हो. And then they broke window panes, broke the window glasses of houses, shops, window panes of cars, and it was a chaotic situation. So I had a meeting with the commandant, and the DIG also landed up. So we went and met the commandant of the Punjab Police Battalion, and then we were assured that everything was okay. The situation was on the mend, so I shouldn't worry. So we went across to have dinner with the SP in the house, which is adjacent to the circuit house. The circuit house itself was the headquarters of Punjab Police, and that was just about 400 feet away, or even less maybe. And we settled, and around for dinner, we had a quick dinner, and at 9:30, they were firing, shots rang out, and soon there was a barrage of firing. The whole place was lit up like Diwali, firing from not only from circuit house, but also from many, many posts around the town. At that point in time, I had no idea as to where they were firing, and nor did the SP's guards have any idea whether firing was taking place, which direction the shots were fired at. And they also started firing indiscriminately, and at the circuit house. They were asked to stop firing. And this firing, actually, these chaps were actually firing in the air. And around 2 a.m. in the morning, starting at 9:30, they ceased firing. And then we returned to our home. In the morning, the DIG and myself, I drove the gypsy, and the DIG and 2-3 guards, they just went around the town, met these. That time, the chaps were back in their senses. They seemed quite peaceful after having caused and wreaked havoc in the night. There were many, while firing was on, there were many calls made to my house. And obviously, since I was at the SP's residence, I could not answer the calls. There were few calls which came to the SP's house. And we replied, I think the SP spoke and said that, well, there's some firing going on. We can't say how things will unfold. No assurance could be given to the public. And the people were really petrified, absolutely terrified what was happening. And I feel, and I think with the passage of time, I think they understood our own difficulties. They understood that we ourselves were a victim of something unexpected, that our own men had behaved in a highly indisciplined manner. Nobody died, of course, but it was a reign of terror for a few hours. But people very rightly expected us to do something more than what we did, and that was a failure of communication. Maybe at that time we should have kept on talking, but it's easier said than done, because I had no confidence at that time when firing was going on. My daughter was below the bed, she was 2 years old, and taking shelter there. It is a glass house which can be shattered any time by a hail of bullets. But I was no Alexander. It's not that I went out on my horse, tried to confront them with my companion cavalry. And it would have been perhaps foolhardy to do it. But while Alexander was an example of audacious bravery, almost bordering on recklessness, I, on the other hand, was very much on the back foot. And it took me 2 months after that to regain the confidence of people. We had this total literacy campaign. I got involved in that, and met people and all that. And they were okay. They understood. But what I'm making is that therefore that leadership may have failures, it may have successes. Even Alexander had his own issues. He had a problem of trying to integrate the cultures of Greece and Persia. He introduced certain Persian customs in the court, that is proskinesis, that is paying homage to the king by bowing before him. And this was not like the Greeks, because Greeks only bowed before their god, not before Zeus or before Heracles, but never before human beings. Because you are more equal than you're one among equals, but you're not far above the rest. That was a Greek style of doing things. So, I think, okay, what are the core values of leadership? After even giving you an example of military leadership, to set the tone, to my mind, there are only 3 core values. There are many, many values. You can have high intelligence, emotional intelligence, ability to take the initiative. There's so many values. But let us just bring down the 3 core values. One is vision, second is integrity, third is empathy. Now, what is vision? What do I mean by vision? I think any leader, an effective leader, I'll say effective, I'm not saying morally ethical leadership, but I'm saying effective leader should have a vision. What is the vision? Vision is some goal or target set by the leader who's seeing beyond the chaos and clutter of the day. What is there? What is the thing that I want my men to do? This cannot be given on your first day of your new job. You would understand the thing after a few months and decide, this is where I want my men to go. This is where I also want to go. So that is a vision. But that vision has to be both realistic and achievable. It should not be something which is completely unrealistic, fantastic, beyond anybody's reach. But at the same time, it has to be challenging. When I was chairman of Assam Distribution Company, so I, at one stage in 2017, when I realized that revenue performance in one particular month was good. In those days, getting 400 crores per month was considered to be good. I was absolutely on top of the world that we have achieved 404 crores or something. In the next 2 months, when I realized that 425 crores hai, so we must try and up the ante. 400 is not per month, but for the whole year. Okay, in those days. So I initially raised it to 425, and finally, after 2 months, I had decided that it should be raised to around 500. And when this was done, many felt that it was impossible to achieve. When eventually we pegged on at it, and we kept trying, eventually we crossed 542 crores in 2017-18. And our collection efficiency, that is the total demand, that you achieved little more than the total demand, because you were able to collect some of the old dues. So it was more than the demand. So it was 102%. And our men were absolutely, beside themselves with joy when this happened. And in our WhatsApp group, it was all self-congratulatory. We have done it. Boys, we have done it. And one perceptive engineer, in fact, wrote that even an organization does not know what it can achieve. And this is what happened to APDCL in 17-18. My mind, that what I was able to convince or convey to my stakeholders, my own officers, is that I gave them a challenging target which was achievable. And that's how this was a success story. Because the defeatist mentality or the historical legacy of poor performance was always there and had to be overcome in the corporation. And therefore, it is the vision that inspired the team to focus with a view to achieving it. Let me say, I was at that time at the height of popularity when this was achieving. But remember one thing, popularity, something does not happen all the time continuously towards the end. No. It will require one bad incident for it to collapse. There's nothing called permanent popularity. Only thing people may like or dislike, but one stage, 5 years later, no, you on the whole okay chap. They may come to that conclusion. I think next one. The next one is integrity. When we talk of integrity, what is that shining, timeless, shining quality that is present in us all the times? Integrity. And integrity is not being just non-corrupt, but it also means being transparent, sincere, and honest. That is walking the talk, which great Mahatma Gandhi himself did. Walking the talk. That you have one set of, it's not that you have one set of principles for yourself and another set for your followers. You have to walk the talk. So that's why integrity is so very important. Now, test of integrity is not something you have an opinion, is not something of an opinion that you have of yourself. It is actually what your peer group thinks of you. How do they perceive you? You know generally whether you are liked or not liked. You know it. And what is your group? If you are among professors, everyone knows XYZ is a good professor. And students also know it. You also know it, if you are good. If you are bad also you know it, but you would not like to believe it. So, therefore the test of integrity is the peer opinion. And we all know it, all the time. So this is what I call as integrity. That these are sometimes very difficult to achieve. I have to be honest to say that there are many a time that you may fall within your own eyes that you have not done much more than what you did, what you ought to have done. So it is something very difficult to achieve. And I'm sure Gandhiji himself may have failed, and he has, if you go by some of the examples people give. But he was head and shoulders above his contemporaries or his future generations. So that's it was a different kettle of fish. Next, please. Next. Okay. The third core value is empathy. Empathy is feeling for others, how to relate with individuals around you. And people with empathy have high emotional intelligence. It's not the super intellect or the keen intellect or the razor-sharp intellect that some people have, but it's the feeling for others and how you as a leader would relate to others. That involves listening, caring, and being sensitive to others. I'll give you one small example. My father was in 1958 Assistant Commissioner in Ladakh. And out of great enthusiasm of a young man, when Pandit Nehru had visited Ladakh to the frontiers to rouse the morale of the people, of the army, and he wanted to distribute fruits, sweets I think, to the men who were lined up. And my father went to collect the basket, to pick up the basket to carry it for Prime Minister. There are very few officers in any Deputy Commissioner, Assistant Commissioner, I don't know whether, but the Chief of Army Staff was there. And Prime Nehru gave him a sound rebuke. He says, "What are you doing? I want Timmy to be there." Timmy was General Timaya, not you. And my father withdrew into his shell, sulking, that after having been upbraided by no less a person than the Prime Minister, what he should do. I mean, he stopped shaving, went to the corner, and didn't come out during the visit of the Prime Minister. He kept a great distance. And when the visit ended after a day, and as Nehru was climbing up the stairs, he said, "Where is that young man?" He called him, and he hugged him. He says, "You have come from such great distance, and do well." And that's all. This is being sensitive. I'm not saying this is a great example of empathy, but it's being sensitive. Sometimes we lose our temper and insult people and talk down to them. But if we try to make amends for it by being sensitive and trying to patch up, it does a world of good. In a bureaucratic setting, I have seen a lot of people who lack empathy, who are brilliant, absolutely brilliant, very thorough, would read everything, would be theoretically sound with all the knowledge and great analytical ability. But they were, within inverted commas, I can say, unfeeling individuals. They never felt, they didn't ask anyone about who they were, what is their problem, are they okay, nothing of that sort. He would come and he would give them task and expect them to measure up to his expectations. These are examples of people without empathy. Now what happens with people without empathy is that even if they bring about major changes and reforms, they are unable to ensure that the reforms survive their tenure. Then all the good work that's done by them would be demolished by the next leader or the leaders coming after him, whatever position that he may hold. So for leadership to make it enduring, his success and his reforms enduring, you need to have empathy, because there should be a lot of people who are willing to carry on with your changes and reforms. Next. Right. There's a small concept of team building which is associated with leadership. I mentioned that there are three core values of vision, integrity, and empathy. But with all these three qualities, what you need you have to build a team. A good team leader creates a shared sense of purpose. He sets targets, builds a team by mentoring. That is, mentoring means coaching. You coach your subordinates to take your position. You're not a large tree under which nothing grows. You coach others to take up leadership position. But in doing so, you share the glory but give more credit to your men. But if some disaster happens, you take the blame entirely. This is the essence of team building. And by coaching and giving them positions of responsibility, you instill confidence in them. It also leads to individual growth. It grooms the personality. Next, please. What is a good strategy for team building? All this comes with leadership. It means it is a positive mental attitude and a genuine enthusiasm, which the leader must always display. And sometimes, with your own subordinate, it's not money that matters. It is self-respect that is more important. And monetary incentives may mean nothing to some people. How to handle perennial deviance? There are some people who are always leaders of opposition. How to do with such leaders? They are perennial deviants. How to deal with them? How to tackle with them? I personally feel that you have to ignore them. Don't try to tackle them in the beginning, because you first establish your own position and then you can tackle them. There are some people who come and clear the organ stable, so to speak, right in the first day and do everything and end up hurting themselves. It's not a good strategy in my mind, in my opinion. Sometimes small wins make big outcomes. You win small things, we have done this together. And then you can go on to big things. Small wins lead to big outcomes. And through negotiation with various stakeholders, you try to maximize their consensus to reach a win-win situation. In every cause, there are some champions. You find in a group, you go to a new office, you find there are some who are your supporters, right from you. On all the things you say, yes, of course, those are wonderful things, we should do it. They are the champions of a cause. But then there is a critical mass who are just watching. Your leadership ability will be seen in the manner that you convince the silent majority, this critical mass. And once you manage to get hold of them, get them on your side, you will be able to convert the silent majority. Through consensus building, a silent manager can be completely converted to your cause. So this is how the strategy for team building is. Come, next one, please. So team is something called, if you break up the acronym, team is training, encouragement or encouraged, aim and motivation. Together everyone achieves more, which you must be doing, Mr. Pansardi. Next. Next, please. Now, there are various styles of leadership, and no style of leadership is inferior or superior to the other. Nothing intrinsic about democratic leadership, nothing great about military leadership of Alexander the Great. It depends on the situation. Come to the next one, please. Let me first come to authoritarian leadership. Come quickly. Hello. Yeah. I think, is this the one? Now, authoritarian leadership believes in this great man theory that we have got inborn talent. He's got X. There are some people who think they are God's gift to mankind. Born leaders. And they have such inborn talent, but they often come to grief as well. But yet there are some who succeed. Now, Hitler and Mussolini were authoritarian dictators. They were both effective and very popular in the initial years. If you see the old clippings of Nazi Germany of the 1930s, you would see that the German masses became hysterical in that period. They were all great supporters of Adolf Hitler, and he was also delivering. So, but in the long run, surely he would not have been successful. Alexander the Great was a great military leader, but what of Alexander in the peacetime? We have not tested him then. My guess is that he would have been a restless king and been a modest success as a peacetime leader, because his talent was not made for peacetime situations. A democratic leadership is suited where there is, as mentioned to you earlier, rule of law, full of independent-minded and intelligent people. That's a setting like in the West, especially in a country like United Kingdom. Now you have doubts whether America is that type of country, because you can bring back Trump. Then I doubt whether they've got intelligent people of the kind that's my personal opinion. Okay, next one, please. Yes. There are three small definitions of other types of leadership. One is transactional. Now, transactional, their leadership is seen in multinationals, where the leadership ensures compliance by a set of rewards and punishments. You do this, I do that. You work harder, you'll get a hike. If you don't work harder, you're kicked out. As simple as that. There is no emotional content in that sort of relationship. Transformational leadership is seen in charismatic, moral, and visionary type of leaders. Gautam Buddha, Prophet Muhammad. And it has a deep and profound impact on his followers, on their followers. Then the last one is a very interesting one, laissez-faire. There are some people who don't believe in any kind of leadership. What they do is that only leadership they provide is to collect a good set of people who take all action, do the right thing, and he doesn't interfere. So today, but you should not take this as as something that can be overlooked. No, this is a very important type of leadership, because you can lead not from the front but from the back in doing so. Now, in a technical organization like I am there, I have no experience of doing regulations, and I have gone to CERC, which is a technical organization. What do? I know there are some people who are very good at their work, and they don't want to be interfered with all the time, and I don't try to show that I'm superior to them in any way. So in that way, for a few months, I practiced leadership from the back, that laissez-faire kind of leadership. And it proved to be, I think, effective because I got their support. But in many situations, this sort of leadership doesn't work. But in some companies, you have that sort of leaders who have technical, professional people who take the decision. Maybe a company like, I don't know, in today's world, Tata's perhaps would come closest to it because they have professional management style who get them in management positions due to their merit, not because of their proximity to this or that person. Concept of leading from the back is power and responsibility delegated to well-educated, skilled, and intelligent team of subordinates. Even when I see the history of civil service, there were some British officers who would do a lot of hard work, write rules, write the history, and who were loners and who were very, very difficult persons. They were so brilliant. But when it comes to delivery, it is the less than brilliant people who are able to get the best out of the men who are also successful. And that can be seen from the history of civil service as well. That there are people who have been, who may themselves not know too much. They can't write a great article, but he can get people to write an appropriate article and give them, instill in them confidence and also give them enough incentives for doing so. Next. Ethical dilemmas. Now, Machiavelli famously opined that a leader needed a mix of ruthlessness, cynicism, and amorality to gain power and hold on to it. But this is a cynical view of leadership, of ethical dilemmas that leaders face. I don't think in the real world also ethics can be ignored. Now, ethical dilemmas are of two types. One is conflict between ethical values and the need for self-preservation. This is one thing that we are always facing. The ethical values that are seen in certain things that we have to uphold, and the need for self-preservation of yourself and your company, your organization. Now, in companies, you have situations where environmental laws have to be followed, and you also, as a company, for self-preservation, you have to earn a decent profit. Your bottom line should be good. Now, this conflict is faced, and you remember the Volkswagen's case, I think there's a management study on it, where the company had manipulated the software in the emission results which the vehicle was showing. And the result was that there was a complete collapse and leadership had to be changed. The whole thing came unraveling. The damage which was inflicted on Volkswagen was far more than what it was anticipated by the leadership in being deceptive and dodgy. Then there are also issues relating to conflicting ethical values. Now you have a situation where, remember Enron also, they had this very deceptive and dodgy accounts where they were not showing everything upfront in their book of accounts. And today Enron is no name. In the 1990s, Enron was a big name. They had invested in the Ratnagiri power plant. And Rebecca Marks, the head of Enron India, was feted all over the country. I remember seeing her, and everybody used to look upon her. In just 2 or 3 years, it was all over. The conflicting ethical values. Now, for instance, you have a company like iPhone which always faces this problem. Should they give the password of all the phone numbers? Should they? In the interest of national security? because their stated policy is to maintain privacy. And the US intelligence would say that these are terrorists. You have to give their names. So these are dilemmas faced in the real world. These are ethical dilemmas. Next. So what are the ethical checks? I'm really come to the last two slides. Check questions. These are the very simplistic way of looking at things. There are a few ethical questions that you can pose to yourself. One is, when you issue an order, is my order legal? How do I feel about it myself? Do I know? Do I have a little about doubt, or do I feel it's perfectly right? Does it make me feel proud, that order? Does it, or does it not? Would I feel good if my action was published in the newspaper for public scrutiny? Would I be very happy? Would I recommend a similar action to my own child? And lastly, does it promote a win-win situation? Ask these questions to yourself, then you will have the answers to these dilemmas. It's a very simple test. There's nothing. Next. I think this photo is gone. Next. No, this was a photo, again, I took from the internet about the formation of geese. They actually go on a V form. Now, geese are great team leaders. That front position, this is again from net, nothing original about it. One goose leads the whole formation. And if that goose gets tired, he is replaced by another goose. And when a particular goose falls ill and has to come down to the terrestrial level, there are 2 other or 3 other geese who would come and give him company till he feels okay. And when they move in a formation, they move with one goose on top of the other goose. I mean, there is a formation that allows wind to pass by. So the resistance of wind is reduced because one over another, not one in single line file. This is a formation that you would see in jet engines also, in jet fighters also. So this is an example of goose, and we should therefore be like goose, that we can be replaced. And this is also a democratic form of leadership. Anybody can take up the leadership position. This is an excellent example of teamwork. Next. What are the lessons learned? First, it conserves energy while they do this. Each bird flies slightly above the bird in front of them, resulting in a reduction of wind resistance, which I have mentioned. The second benefit is that it's easy to keep track of every bird in the group because you are in each one is allocated different levels. So flying in a formation enhances communication and coordination. Every goose takes turn to be a leader, and if somebody tired, will be replaced. Falling back when it gets tired means that they can fly for a long time before they need rest. Just as birds fly together to create less resistance, we as leaders can also inspire and motivate others to share a common direction and work cohesively towards the goal. Next. Thank you for attention. That's all that I have to say.
Thank you, sir, for your delivery. Now we move on to a brief question and answer round.
How can leaders build trust and credibility with their teams, especially during challenging times?
Every leader has to be seen to be walking the talk. He needs to also, at the same time, keep in touch with the stakeholders. So when he is transparent and he walks the talk and he doesn't have dubious standards, I think it will automatically generate trust. Initially, in any situation, people they look at you with suspicion. They don't know what sort of material you are, and many a time they also check with your past, your record. How is he? Kaisa aadmi hai? And that could be the initial reassurance, or it could be something very negative. Then they know not what to expect. But if the public opinion is good generally, and you actually walk the talk, you will be able to build a team and your people will start trusting you as much as you trust them. Remember one thing, trusting is mutual. If you trust the people will trust you. I have seen that it's not possible to deliver all the time by intense scrutiny. You will have to take a chance occasionally, and you will live on trust as well. And there are very few cases where people will fail and who would cheat you. If you are a trusting person, by and large it helps, but not blindly. At least you have to do a modicum of due diligence. But if you don't trust, you will see through everything, and it's take a long time to dispose of matters. So what did I say? I said that firstly, transparent kind of leadership. Then second thing I said, walking the talk. Third thing is trusting others to ensure that they trust you. Right? And use the strategy I mentioned of starting off with something small and winning there, because small wins lead to big outcomes in the future. Do that. And lastly, it's to continuous talk. Now, in my own career, I felt that in 1 or 2 points I did not discuss with stakeholders very much, because I didn't trust them. I said they'll take a very negative view and they'll go by the self-interest. I was wrong in that. You have to make an attempt to reach out to everyone, including your opponents and your detractors. When you reach out to them and you have proper stakeholder consultation, I think the chances of, though it will take a little longer time, but the success will be grounded on something firm and concrete. And it may just endure a little more, rather than when you push things from the top. That's my answer to it.
Thank you, sir. Next question. Please raise your hand. We have one at the back.
This is all MBA students. These are MBA students.
Hello.
That one is an MBA, that was a BA. It's a mixed group, so we have teens.
Good evening, everybody, and good evening, speakers. My name is Bashav Sharkar from MBA second semester. My question is that you also mentioned regarding in the part of the integrity. So the question is that any leader, two leader between any complications happen, what should do in this situation, in this scenario? Thank you.
You see, there some cases it's inevitable that you'll fall out, but from your side, if you shouldn't be the one who precipitates matters, in the sense that you give a chance to the other chap to come around to your view and also try to find a middle ground. In many times what happens is, I was mentioning about integrity. Let me add one more thing, which I could not enlarge upon. That is that integrity is transparency and sincerity in all times, even when people are not watching you. Because when you feel that nobody is watching you and you do it, you will get caught out. There is always somebody who is looking at you. So it has to be consistent and all the time, whatever standards you have. But I am the first one to admit that in all situations, all the time, it's very difficult to uphold that standard.
Yeah.
Good evening, sir. Myself, Vanshika Agarwal from MBA second sem. Sir, my question to you is that how would you communicate your visions and goals effectively to your team members?
A very earnest and shared goal. You should feel for it. Many times people see your expressions. How much do you feel for the goal? And if you talk to them, it may not happen in a day, it may not happen in a minute, but it may happen over time. And I again repeat the same thing, is that when you go do a teamwork and you genuinely believe in teamwork, you first try it out in small cases which are non-controversial. which are where it is easy to have consensus and see the results. If it gives you good results, then you can always replicate in tougher cases. So it's not easy to communicate goals and get immediate acceptance. It needs time, you need to keep pegging at it, and you have to put in a lot of effort. But still nothing may happen also. There would be one or two persons who are dead against any change. So what do you do with this case? After a while you start ignoring them. Initially ignore them, second time you ignore them positively, don't even look at them. Assume that they don't exist. Then one day they may actually come to your side by the sheer neglect that they are facing or going through. So communication of goal is how sincerely and transparently you're able to you can communicate with your stakeholders. And if you are serious and your track record is good, you will succeed. I mean, and that's how leaders are made, and most of the leaders are very good at communication. Communication doesn't mean the fluency in the language. There are many elements to it. It's simply your expressions, your gestures, your choice of words. Fluency and all that may not be that very important. I mean, there may be absolutely fluent liars and who would sell anyone. But truth and honesty is something that people perceive after a while.
A very good afternoon, sir. I'm Avantika Barua from BBA 6th semester. So my question for you is, how effective is the reward and punishment system in motivating our team members?
It's very useful in a very large multinational setup covering many continents. How do you know somebody who's working for you in Nigeria if you head the multinational company in Mumbai? So there it is only how you correspond with them and what goals you set for them through a set of rewards and punishment. In big setup with lots of people where it's not possible to meet all of them at one stage, this is the only way out, I think. I don't find much merit. I can't commend this thing for you, but in your situation like this, transactional leadership is not the best method. We know this group of friends here, if you want to assume leadership position, transactional is very opportunistic. So it may not be useful at all. But when you are in a large area, when you don't see everyone, then it is through your action of giving rewards and taking action, dispersing punishment, dispersing rewards, that may be successful. But in a small setup, surely this is not the method.
I want to ask you, so how do you balance maintaining authority as well as with being approachable as a leader?
It makes me think. There are times, much of this authoritarian and being very strict and all, this is all play acting. Time and again, I had to assume that's form of leadership, of cracking the whip. Cracking the whip. You want to know who's the boss. But it's play acting. You may not be very angry yourself. You want to do it for effect. And very rarely, and if you actually are genuinely angry, you lose control. And many people who actually crack the whip are actually just doing it for effect. But it's a contradiction in a way. In a way, it's contradiction because many of these authoritarian types who always crack the whip and are hugely unpopular are not accessible. They are people who would have some peer followers and subordinates would just ingratiate before the leader and before him and seek favors and say that you're right, you're always right. But again, moment the leader leaves the stage, people heave a sigh of relief. Would you like to be that sort of leader? Accessibility with a bit of play acting at times when things go beyond hand is not a bad idea. But by and large, you should be accessible, by and large. And in a country like ours, maybe I think you have to be accessible. If you're a political leader, you have to be accessible. If you are a bureaucrat, administrator, you have to be accessible. If you're a managing director of a company or heading a company, you have to be accessible. Otherwise, your channels of information will not flow to you. You won't know what's the truth. Sometimes very difficult people and very tough people come and speak the truth to you, which you may not like. You might just be very irritated, but they are those truths which has been delivered to you. So channels have to be open all the time so people can approach you and be accessible to you. Even in military leadership, I'm not talking Alexander the Great. Alexander, in a way, was always accessible. Now I'll give 2 examples of his formal leadership. He led from the front and he would always rouse his own men to great acts by brave acts, great and brave acts, by talking to them, giving lectures to them, and instilling pride of being a Macedonian and Greek to his soldiers. And he would be all the time urging, go down the formation and start telling everyone, come on, let's do it. We have one more aim to one more agenda to complete. And he go up and down all the time to his own formations, helping someone in some place, pulling him up. No, that's not the way. Come on. And when he was going through the very dreary Cadrosian desert of Baluchistan, people were dying like flies. His own men were dying. And they were parched, throats were parched, they were very thirsty. And in one place they found some water where only one man could drink. So his men, his soldiers, put all that water in one helmet and brought it to him to drink. What do you think would Alexander have done? And I'll tell you what he did. He took that helmet and threw the water. If nobody else drinks, I will also not drink. Remember. So, as I said, he left a standard. Now, there were many problems with his leadership, but we'll talk about it some other time.
All the queries of our ignited mind. We have students from different backgrounds, and we also have the Inslisters and then student council members and students from Royal School of Business and other schools. I'm sure you gladly learned a lot from the session, because it's a big opportunity when you get to hear from industry stalwarts and people of eminence who take out time from their busy schedule to be amongst us. Thank you so much, sir, for accepting our invitation and interacting with the students. Have a wonderful evening ahead, sir.